and you can call it whatever you want. But one of the things I know that you believe in, that the only really authoritative source that we have about life after death is the Bible. So the Bible actually speaks about heaven 500 times. And so I just want to show you some things that may surprise you about your eternal home tonight from Revelation chapter 21. So we're dealing with this final phase of eternity, and theologians refer to this as the eternal state. So if you have your Bibles with you, we're going to be in Revelation chapter 21, and I'm just going to start with the first 8 verses, and I'm kind of going to be jumping around a little bit in this chapter, but by the end, we will have covered most of it. So it begins verse 1, "Then I," this is John writing, "saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eye. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away.' He who is seated on the throne said, 'I am making everything new.' Then he said, 'Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true.' He said to me, 'It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. For those who are victorious will inherit all of this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars will be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur.'" And most people would never think of that when they think of heaven. But it's going to require destruction. Verse 1 tells us that John saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. And we saw that in the previous chapter last week. Heaven and earth fled away from God. And let me tell you where we are chronologically by the time we get to Revelation 21, as most of you probably know. Life as it once existed on this earth is over. The rapture of the church has happened. The tribulation is now over. Jesus has returned to this earth in glory, setting his foot on the Mount of Olives. He has established and run the full course of the millennial kingdom, that 1,000-year reign on this earth. The great white throne judgment is over. Satan, the false prophet, and the Antichrist and all unbelievers are now in the lake of fire for all eternity. But this, in chapter 21, this is a different phase. The first heaven and first earth are gone. They're no more. But this is exactly what Jesus said would happen. Didn't he say heaven and earth will pass away, but my word will never pass away? We quote and like to focus on that last part of that verse. But from Jesus' own lips right here, he's telling everyone, announcing to them that this world is going to come to an end. And how will it end? Peter gives us a little revelation in 2 Peter 3:10. Says, "The day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements," that's the physical universe, "will melt with fervent heat." Did you know that up until the past 100 years or so, the prevailing cosmology among scientists, cosmology is the study or the origin of and development and maintenance of the universe, etc., the common prevailing theory was known as the steady state theory, kind of just the belief that everything just continues. It's always been just as it once always was. There's no beginning, there's no end, just kind of this steady continuation in this perpetual state. But then science caught up because they started studying things like the sun. And they discovered the sun's radiation is produced by the loss of part of its mass. So 4,200,000 tons of mass per second are lost by the sun, just as it produces radiation and sunlight and warmth. It burns that off every second. And that means that the sun is running down. And if the sun is running down, it means it'll have an end. And if it had an end, it means that it had a beginning. And so we know God designed this universe. We know he created everything, but he designed it to be temporary. The Bible tells us that he created the world, and in fact, John in chapter 1, he says Jesus is the Word and that he created all things. And then Paul tells us in Colossians that he is before all things, and by him all things consist. Literally, that word means he's holding them tightly together by him. So Jesus was before all things, he created all things, and by him everything is just held together. Can you imagine what would happen if he just let go? Just released it. The Bible tells us and indicates that one day that will happen. And I just referred to 2 Peter chapter 3 about the heavens and the earth melting away. 1 Peter 3:11, it says, since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you to be? You ought to live holy and godly lives as you look forward to the day of God. So in other words, how do we live here if everything here just one day is going to be burned up? Certainly, our focus shouldn't just be all here. Our focus ought to be, as Paul said, we should